Welcome, Sovereign Sisters, to the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast, where today my sister Elvira and I are discussing a generational trauma pattern that is actually more common than we realize. And what I'm referring to is the mother wound. This deep inherited pain affects all aspects of our lives, our spiritual, mental, and physical health, as well as the relationships we form with others and even ourselves and God. The mother wound is not just personal, it's rooted in generations of unmet needs, of neglect, and a lot of unresolved pain. And healing this wound isn't about blame or even fixing relationships. It's about creating freedom within yourself and rewriting the legacy you passed down. Today, we're going to explore how tools like forgiveness, Kundalini Yoga meditation, and ancestral connection can help us all break these cycles and bring lasting transformation. How are you, Elvira?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Very good. And I am excited about what we're going to talk about tonight or today, tonight, whatever day it is, because I feel that what we're going to talk about is very common and a lot of people don't talk about it. There's so many articles that I've read recently where there's a lot more estrangement and complete no contact happening with daughters and mothers, sons and mothers, or even just in general, children and their parents. And today, specifically with the mother wound, I want to just start by saying we understand you, we see you. We're offering a perspective, hopefully, that will help you bring some peace into your heart and find a path to finally break the cycle. So when we say the mother wound, what does that mean to you? Is this something that you grew up knowing about, or is this something that was newer to you as well?
I think growing up, I was very unaware of these wounds that we needed to work on and heal on. This is probably one of the toughest ones for me, honestly. I think to some extent, it's probably what started my healing journey,
Mhm.
what pushed me into it, because it was something so heavy that I knew I needed to work on. I've always known, but I didn't know. It's, and at the same time, I understand where it comes from. Goes back to, I think, all of our wounds. We only know what we know. And I understand our parents only know what they know. And if we don't become aware of it and if we don't speak about it, then it's something that it's not going to get fixed or healed.
I agree with you completely. I feel that the mother wound is actually what drove me to my healing journey as well. Eh, I know a lot of people may say, I don't have a father, he left my life. But to be honest with you, even if father was not in the play in your life, what I've seen with the women I've worked with, even with myself, that our mothers carried us in the and even if we're in a situation where mom did the best she could and dad was the culprit, let's say he was the evil one, right? Like the abuser or left, that regardless, we still hold a ton of resentment for our mothers for not protecting us, for not being there for us the way we needed them to be. So it's so interesting how this wound develops. It's not just like a mother who is very abusive, very hitting, emotional, all these other things. It's also developed through a mother who's very depressed and who herself, of course, went through her own generational trauma. Otherwise, she wouldn't be acting the way she's acting, but very absent or very in her only feminine with no masculinity to really bring that fiery creative passion of a woman to nurture and to make their children feel safe. So it goes both ways, ladies. It's not so cut and dry. It's not linear where it's like, oh, this is what my mom did and this is why. But there is a science behind it. And I think once I started to understand like the science of why this exists, it brought me a lot more peace and acceptance and surrender. Because I think one of the things that develops from this mother wound, I don't know if you would agree, the deepest pain is that when our mothers are not fully present for us, whether again you feel that they did it intentionally and they're narcissistic or whether they truly went through their own pain, it really does feel like if mom doesn't love me, then no one's gonna. If my mom couldn't be there for me, I am not worthy. I am not good enough. Don't you think?
Yes. And I see that a lot with women that I speak to.
Mhm.
again, it's a topic that it tries to get avoided because we feel we're disrespecting to some extent, or we're not honoring our parents to some extent. But I think the best way to honor them, like I've said before, is to actually heal. And I do see that a lot in regards to women not feeling good enough, or not feeling happy in their lives or worthy of receiving love or
Yeah.
affection, or they think they're not smart enough, they're not good enough because they unfortunately, their mother didn't have that themselves, and they didn't know how to give it to their children. So it's a cycle that keeps repeating itself because nobody's dealt with it. It's like this huge taboo. We're not allowed to speak about our parents because it's twisted into you're disrespecting them. And it's, how are we supposed to heal if we don't speak about it or listen to each other or what we're saying? It's, I was thinking when you sent me this topic that we are going to talk about, I remember when Julio Cesar Chavez, that I started to watch the series. I didn't even continue it because it was so triggering to me. How his sons, it was so sad how both of his sons, they're two of his sons, they have addictions, and one of them tries to speak to him about his addictions or something that happened in their childhood, and Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. just cut him off, really off, and wouldn't let him speak. And I'm like, that's the problem right there. He just wants to acknowledge, be heard and acknowledge, yes, this happened. And maybe the dad is not able to give the apology,
Yeah.
but at least just listen to your son and what he's trying to say is to get us all gone. He just wants to get it out and just be heard. You're like, yes, this happened. I'm sorry. I was reacting out of my own unconsciousness and never, and then do what is necessary to correct it. And I think that's where so much healing come.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just listening. And it's hard. It's hard. It's really hard. There's been coaching calls that I've said before where you guys give me feedback in the women's coaching call.
Yeah.
And the first instinct is I'm being attacked.
Right.
You guys are being mean to me. And then I'll listen to the replay. You guys were not mean to me. You guys, it was the feedback or the response was nothing like I had perceived it in the beginning when I first heard it.
Mm,
So I understand it's very hard to hear when somebody's telling you, this is what you did to me, this is how you hurt me.
right.
But it's so important to actually just listen.
Yeah. And there's this article that we're going to get to on this episode from a psychotherapist that talks about the two main reasons why children go no contact with their parents. And we're going to get to that, I promise you. But going back to what you said about Julio Cesar Chavez, for example. And for some of you, I know, I think everybody knows who he is. He's like this famous boxer, right? And from what I understand, he also had a serious drug addiction too, right?
Yeah.
So did they say anything about how he grew up?
No, I don't even think I finished the first episode. And I just felt it so heavy. It was so painful to watch everything that was going on. But I don't think they spoke about his, or they didn't. If they did, I haven't watched it.
Didn't get to that point.
Yeah.
Because of course, and you know that it would tell us a lot about why he is the way he is. But it's with him, he's such a perfect example that you bring him up because think about it. Okay, so Julio Cesar Chavez, I'm pretty sure he probably went through a very abusive childhood himself, right? Then he becomes a boxer. You know how much damage that does to the brain and to the nervous system? Then he gets into addiction. We talked about addiction in last week's episode. So if you missed that episode, go check it out because that's going to enlighten you into what we're talking about today. And with the inner child episode we just did too, I'll link them in the comments. So do you see my heart breaks because do you see how easy it is for this pattern to continue? Like you said, all it takes is for him to just create space for his children, right? That's all it takes. It's common sense, right? So why doesn't he do that? It's the nervous system and the brain. It's if you were to tell Julio Cesar Chavez right now that all he has to do is hold space for his children, he would look at you like you're some crazy woman. Because in his nervous system and in his brain, all there is World War III, dysregulation. The brain, literally, what it does is that, first of all, when we are first born, we're already pre-wired in the womb by our mother's nervous system. So we're already born with whatever she's going through and whatever grandma went through. Then we're born, and then there's something known as attunement. And what that is the child has to attune to the mother. So think about all the mothers that go through postpartum depression. That's so common, right? And the reason postpartum depression is common is, first of all, there's a huge hormonal imbalance that's happening, right? We just had a baby. So the body's, what the heck just happened? It's trying to harmonize itself again. So you have high levels of cortisol, high levels of adrenaline. You don't feel grounded. And there's also even a theory of ghost. I forget what the diagnosis is called, but basically when you have a child, you feel empty. You truly feel like
Mhm.
you lost something. Like you literally are like, what is wrong with me? And you can't even tell. Like get stuck in these cycles. And then there's such sad stories of women that do some really sad things to themselves and to their children because of postpartum depression. So the nervous system has to attune in order to feel safe. That's how the baby feels safe, right? So if you're a mom that's going through depression yourself, the baby and you never attune. That's why the baby keeps crying. That's why the baby has colic. That's why the baby has all of these different problems. And then the baby grows up, right? And it starts to develop the ego as it starts to speak, as we start to have experiences of our own, right? And our brains are developing between the ages of 0 to 7. So if we were never able to attune with the mother who was depressed from the get-go, that's where our nervous system dysregulation actually starts, even in the womb. So when we think about parents and we're like, why don't they just get it? Like a mom, for example, why can't my mom just listen to me? Why is my mom a narcissist? I want to really take it to the scientific YouTube and to help you know that it's not personal. I know that it's easier said than done, but the healing work that I had to do, it brought healing to the level of my mind where there was peace in my heart, knowing that what my mom couldn't do for me had nothing to do with my worth. And even now, because they're getting older, my parents, right? And if they're not doing the preventive medicine work or they don't have a good relationship with God, their nervous systems are going to get more wrecked. Their brains are going to get more wrecked, right? Why then I do this work every single day is to be able to sustain and to continue to understand that this is not personal. That what a parent is doing, like Julio Cesar Chavez, if we dealt with his brain, if we dealt with his nervous system, I bet you anything that he would be a completely different father. But it's like we were talking about last week. Not only do we have generational trauma, then we have addictions, and then that causes even more brain issues and more nervous system dysregulations. As much as there are some parents that have done some really evil things to their children, I'm talking about SA, I'm talking about trafficking. I've heard some of the worst stories in my lifetime where why would a mother ever do that? Like, why? It has nothing to do with the fact that I don't believe anyone is purely evil. I really do believe that there is a nervous system dysregulation and a brain trauma that needs to be addressed. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it also has to do a lot with the culture, and it's not just a Hispanic culture because I've seen certain shows where even Asians or it doesn't matter. There's so many cultures where you have to respect the elders. Yes, everybody deserves respect, but it becomes you have to do what I say because I'm your parent and that's it. You're not gonna argue with me. You're gonna take this career. You're gonna do this. You're gonna be a doctor. You're gonna be a lawyer. I don't care what you want. It's just you're gonna do as I say. And I see it sometimes even with my parents. I'll tell how is your in their mind, it's like, how is this kid gonna tell me how to do anything? Because sometimes I'll tell my dad, I'm like, Dad, you shouldn't do that. It's this and that. And then he'll argue with me, like, you're not this and that. And then somebody else would be like, Mija, my client came over, my friend, and he said that I shouldn't be doing this and this and I'm like, didn't I just tell you the exact same thing? And you told me no. And you argue with me? And now you're this I was like, fine. As long as he does it, fine. Whatever. He don't want to listen to me because how is this younger person, my child, gonna tell me what I should already know? But I think it also goes back to the ego. But it's
Mhm.
I do see it in not just our culture. Is I see it in a lot of cultures as well, where they do that, unfortunately.
Yeah. But I think you're right. I think it's very much more prominent in our culture. Maybe not. Like, I think we see it in everyone, and maybe because we're living it. But I was always about that. Don't talk back. Don't disrespect. Don't speak your whatever. I was a really rowdy little girl.
She
My
had
mom,
no dogs whatsoever.
I- my mom just wanted me to be a quiet little Catholic girl, and I was the complete opposite, like complete opposite of that, and still am that way. But yeah, I totally understand, and it is cultural. But I think by the same token, we're seeing more and more children speak up about the unfairness and the pain that comes with feeling like you live with a narcissistic parent or feeling like you live with somebody who's just you were not seen as a child and then they still don't see you as an adult. It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. So I understand. I feel that everything is healable. I feel that everything is forgivable. And we're going to talk about that. But that doesn't always mean that you're going to have an actual physical relationship with your parents. In fact, especially with your mom, there's this one article that I was talking to you about recently that this psychotherapist wrote, and he revealed the two main reasons why adult children cut off their parents. And this guy's pretty well versed. He actually did, apparently, he did a video on this on TikTok, I believe, and he had to take it down because basically what he was saying is that if you have no contact with your child, it's the mother's fault. It's not a fault, but it's her responsibility to take accountability. It's not the child. And a lot of mothers got really triggered by that. But here's the two reasons why. And I agree with them 1,000%. If my child is not talking to me, that's an issue I have to resolve, not my child, because there's a lead up to that. Even if you're like, my child is a drug addict, my child does all this. Why is he doing that? Or why is she doing that? Why the pain? No one just wakes up and decides to be an addict. No one just wakes up, like we talked about last week, it's nervous system brain. There's a reason for that. And like I said last week, the addict is showing us a place where the family needs a lot of healing. And the two things that he said, the psychotherapist, which I agree with completely, are number one, the adult child feels like they can't pretend anymore. There's a lot of conflicts that could fall under this umbrella. Even sometimes this falls under a lot like sexuality, like being accepted as gay. I know in the culture and where I come from, that's a difficult thing for Mexican families to accept. I know that they struggle with that, but there's other things too, like secrets, family secrets, right? Um, Being abused as a child and then talking to your parents about it, and then your parents not wanting to talk about it, tucking it under the rug. The when the child feels like they just can't pretend anymore, they literally just give up. And they're like, if I can't find comfort and be seen by my parents, then what's the point of even talking to them? And that leads to the second one. They don't know how to manage the conflict without it stressing them out. So what that means is that basically you get to this tipping point where I don't know how to be authentic without it starting a conflict. So you become authentically, you speak your voice, and now there's fighting because of that. Or even you enter into the healing journey. Oh my God, triggered because of that. Instead of, you would think your mom would want you to heal. You would think that your mom would give you all these accolades, but instead she's triggered by it. And she's triggered by it because she knows that she needs to do that too. So those were the two biggest problems. And I can totally relate to what the psychotherapist is saying. Yes, I had to do a lot of forgiveness work. And in my situation, that ended up me having a closer relationship with my mom now. But that's not the case for everyone. And I don't want anyone to think that way. And especially in our culture where it's like you said, blood is thicker than water. If you're falling under these two situations, look, there were a lot of things that my children had to confront me about that they said, this is what happened. This is what you did, or this is how I felt. And damn, was that hard to hear. Damn, was that carried a lot of guilt and shame. But dear Lord, now they cannot say that to me because I devote my life to healing myself and to creating an environment in my home where I'm not telling you that there's not arguments or chaos, but there's resolution. And there's stuff that does not have to get tucked under the rug. You're being seen. And I apologize for being unconscious all those years and not seeing you, but I am here for you now. Does that make sense?
I have a knot in my throat. I admire you for that. I really do. Because what you just said about the psychologist, I had a friend who, like I said, I know they only know what they know,
Yeah.
but it got to the point, at least with me, that I suppressed so much of my emotions, of my feelings, of my needs, of my wants to keep the peace. The hell was inside me, but I'm trying to keep the peace. And I had someone that I dearly to me, a close friend of mine, who we spend a lot of time together in this industry, in my line of work in real estate. And we would get together. We were always laughing, joking, just having fun. But when she started coming around when I was with my family, she noticed how I would shut down and I would feel it, but I couldn't, I was so used to it that I would just shut down. I would stop speaking. I would just sit.
Mm.
My nervous system was just, and I was trying, what I see now that I was trying to calm myself down because my nervous system was so triggered. And I remember one time she asked me, "What is going on with you?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" Every time you're around your family, you start shutting down. What is happening? And I think that was part of the awareness that came to me like, what is happening?
Mm.
And when I started the healing journey, I got to a point in my life where I couldn't do it anymore. What you just said, I couldn't do it anymore. I felt I was dying. My soul was dying. I was suffocating. I'm like, what is happening? I couldn't put it together at that moment, but I knew something was happening. And I was searching for something I didn't know what it was, but I was searching for something. When I started the coaching programs, and then I started with the psychologist and another coaching program, the Sovereign Women Academy, where it got to the point where I had to throw in the towel and I completely shut down pretty much with everybody. Not speaking even to my girlfriends. I'm like, I need to quiet my mind to figure out what is happening. And that's when I had started that same year, my daily meditation
Oh.
where I dove in 100%. And it got to the point where I threw in the towel with my family. I said, I'm done. I'm done. I can't do this anymore because then physically, I had already been sick physically for so many years, but it got to a point where I was in so much pain. My face, my head, my shoulders, like everything. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And that's why I threw in the towel. And that's where people, I feel, at the same time, people don't understand. And a lot of judgment came from the family of like, how dare you? Friends and family, like, this is your mother. How can you not speak to your mother? Like, everything she's done for you. I completely see the good things she's done,
Absolutely.
but people don't understand how much not being heard, not being, just being seen,
Yep.
how much it could affect your nervous system. And I've spoken to so many women in the last couple of years where, like I said, it's a subject that we don't speak about because we feel we're being disrespectful or unloyal or whatever. But I see it so much in women that I see it in their eyes where they're like, wow, like, how do you, I tell them how I felt and I could see it in their eyes. They start crying. They're like, I've always felt the same way. And like I said, I don't know if I know it's not just our culture. I know it's not.
I think
It's other cultures as well, but it's something that if we don't talk about it, then how are things going to change?
right.
Like you said, I've had to sit down, like, I have to let my children be who they are, whether I agree with it or not. Sometimes it's difficult, but I have to let them be and I have to listen to them. They have a right to speak their voice. And that's it.
Sister. 1,000%. We all have the right to speak our feelings. And the whole thing about this is that it's a pileup of what you just said, what you were going through. And we've all, the way I dealt with it for you, it's showed up in disease, right? What you were feeling in your physical body. That's why we are feeling that. For me, it was the alcohol. That's the only way that I could cope. It was just like, I have to make this pain go away because as it was, I wasn't seen. And then I felt guilty for drinking alcohol. And then my mom would make me feel even more guilty instead of supporting me and helping me. But I don't know why she thought that was the way to do it. Like, I don't do that to my children at all. But again, lack of ignorance, call it what you will or whatever. Now she would never do that to me, but because I wouldn't let her, there's boundaries now that have developed. But what you just described is what happens to our physical bodies after being in prolonged periods of stress.
Yeah.
It cause physical illness. And it's as simple as the mother not seeing her children, disregarding them. How many mothers, I feel so bad for some mothers who last week I was triggered by one that I was sharing with you. And I'm really doing some inner work on this because why am I so triggered? Because she's off in her new relationship while her son is suffering with addiction. It's like, good for you. But like your son is over here falling apart. And people don't like they don't see it. And I guess maybe I was that mother at one point, and maybe that's something that I need to forgive myself or I am doing a lot of inner reflection on this because of how much I was triggered. But I just wish mothers would see that they become the solution for their children when they actually take accountability. It's even that simple. Yeah, later we can talk about, like you said, you started doing your meditation, that practice that started helping your limbic brain to process emotions, to have the freaking prana to set those boundaries because your body, your inner child is more important than anything else in this world. Perfect. But the first thing that a mother can do to start the healing journey with herself and with their children is to start to take accountability. And that is the really hard part because so much guilt comes up, so much shame. If it wasn't for all of you, my community that we had, it would have been so much harder for me. Because even when I started that community, when I left the real estate industry, like I told you, I took my mask off, but dear Lord, that's when the real healing began. So just as much as I was coaching all of you, you all were coaching me. I was listening to your experiences. I was taking them in. I was using them as wisdom to help me find peace and something that is very difficult to find. But yet, ladies, that's why you have the illnesses, the physical illnesses, the headaches, the high levels of anxiety. The mother wound is at the root of that. And it does take that acknowledgement and going beyond that first stage of shame and guilt, because I think a lot of people don't want to even admit, like you said, we feel guilty. Why? Why can't I just forgive my mom? Why can't I just accept her? Here's why. Because I'm literally becoming physically ill because I'm still not being seen.
Yes. Definitely agree. It's a difficult subject to speak about for sure. Like I said, I've spoken to many women. Some good, some have amazing relationship with their mom, and sometimes it goes back to the dad, but it goes back to the way we were brought. And and if we don't talk about it, we don't work on it, then nothing's ever gonna change, unfortunately.
And that's what we have to take the approach. I believe that the reason for such low success rates in just talk therapy is because we have to address the nervous system and the brain. We have to rewire them. It sounds like, oh, it's possible and complicated. It's not. Okay, there's a lot of data now and science and protocols that show that even after 8 weeks, there's areas of the brain through Kundalini Yoga meditation that start to regrow themselves, right? To start to function again because of this trauma, right? There's breath work that we do in a lot of Kundalini Yoga. What does that do? It allows us to balance the nervous system, creating a sense of safety within ourselves, which is what we need as children that feel like we're abandoned, right? There's mantra chanting. That's a lot. That was a big part of my everyday sadhana practice, but that was instrumental for me because that helped me release all of these blockages. It felt for me, it was like one of the things that we know in Kundalini Yoga Therapy is, especially when it comes to inner child, like all of the wounds get stuck in the lung meridian through the arms and in the ear. And that's why you have people that have like lung cancer and they've never smoked in their life. Why do people have lung cancer if they've never smoked in their life? It's the emotional pain. It's the disconnection to the mother, and especially to the mother. That's why it starts to develop. So as I was doing my own inner healing journey, Kundalini Yoga did the scientific part, and then the Course in Miracles helped me a lot with the forgiveness. And I know we've talked a lot about forgiveness here in this podcast, but it's very important to understand that I don't think it's humanly possible to forgive. I think you really have to invite a higher power, invite them to help you. And for me, that prayer was always like, once my nervous system started getting regulated, like then I was able to say, when I was in these moments of complete despair, I'm willing to see things differently, God. I am willing to see things differently. And that in itself invited God to take the reins, because when it comes to forgiving some of the things that are feel unforgivable, I don't know about you, but it is not easy. It's not overnight. And it's a lot of the times, I don't know, it was like a climb up and then a climb down, a climb up, and then and still is like that sometimes. And I know now that we go down into these voids to pick up more of that wisdom and that integration. And that even though it has felt like that, that I am a bazillion times better off than I was even a year ago or even 2 years ago. What do you think?
Yes, the Course in Miracles definitely has helped. I would fight it in the beginning. And I think it was in 2021, the summer of 2021, when I finally committed to listening to it every week, to being either listening to the recording or being there live, and just learning that at the end of the day, everything has been perfect and there's nothing to forgive, because we needed to go through that in order to be able to heal.
Mm.
So if we didn't go through that, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. I wouldn't be the mother that I am today. So all of that it has been painful, but it has taught me what I need to do, what I don't need to do, and how to do better.
Right.
And I have to be grateful for that. And I completely 100% understand that a lot of times our parents and our grandparents, they only know what they know. They're unhealed inner child as well. They probably were ignored themselves, were not heard, abandoned by their parents or whoever. And I understand they've gone through their own process in life. I completely understand that 100%. I think when people think, "Oh, but you don't speak to them or you don't do this," like, how can you say you understand, but you still don't speak to them? Because my nervous system is still not there. It hasn't caught up yet. I'm still trying to control that and calm it down. If I didn't have my meditation practice, I would be losing my mind right now. There's days where I'm just like, because we forget, we're so like this, we forget to breathe. I'll be going through something this whole week and just taking those deep breaths to calm myself down. And that all comes from my meditation practice, from actually sitting there. And there's different types that we do, that I do, different breathing. I want to go back to the breath of fire. I was trying to look up this morning. I wanted to ask you the song or something. I want to go back to that one. That was probably one of the most difficult ones. Every time you brought it up in the class, like, oh, great. Here we go. Your breath of fire. Not my favorite. And I don't know what point I did it. I'm pretty sure I did it for 40 days, if not longer. At one
Mhm.
point. And it gives you so much, like it just wakes you up.
Mhm.
I think I need to go back to that one,
Right.
because it does help. It reminds you, breathe. There's certain exercises that we're doing that we
Right.
breathe up to here, and then we breathe up to our neck, and we breathe up to our crown. Like it just, I want to go back to that one for
Yeah.
sure.
I think what you're referring to is, think about it. The reason why you're able to talk more about forgiveness, and me too now, because I wasn't like this before. Before my healing journey, somebody said forgiveness, I was like, F that. Whatever. I'm the victim here, right? But that's the whole point. The whole point is that you did the meditation practice to be able to get to the point where you're not as triggered anymore by that word, and you are able to understand it for what it is. That forgiveness can be done from far, because ultimately when we don't forgive, it's like drinking the poison and thinking it's going to kill the other person. And some of us have to do forgiveness even with a mother who's not even alive anymore, or who was never even in the picture. That doesn't mean that just because she's not alive. I know a lot of daughters who basically had such a horrible relationship with their mom in real life, and then the mother transitioned, and then they thought they were gonna be freed because that's what they want. But literally, it's almost, I think somebody wrote a book about that, dude. Like, it's something like, "I want my mother to DIE," or something crazy like that. And I don't judge her. It's interesting, her perspective or whatever. But the whole thing is that she's gone and you're still left with the same nervous system. You're still left with the same brain. And what A Course in Miracles tells us is that we develop these shadow figures that we've talked about, where if we don't bring reconciliation to this, again, this doesn't mean being best friends. This could mean you stepping away and doing your own work, which is what you're doing with your meditation. Then you're going to stop drinking the poison. So Breath of Fire is probably calling you a lot because that's a very intense breathing technique. And the breathing technique is going to fill you with prana, life force energy, to sustain what you're moving through right now, which for a lot of us, when we set boundaries, that gets really hard. Like life gets difficult because you feel even more guilty because you've never done that before. So you need the prana, which is the life force energy, to bring you back to this present, to bring you back to the centeredness, to bring you back to the, my God, my mind wants to tell me to do something else, or even the reactiveness of getting into fights with our parents or with our mother, right? Now, again, before it was like she would say something to me and I'd be like, "Shh," right away. And then not talk to each other for a long time. She would hang up on me and stuff like that. Now it's she says something and I'm like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're saying things based on your projections, not on me. So I'm not as reactive. I'm not like right away trying to defend myself. It happens a lot less now, but when she does say stuff like that, I know she's going through stuff like that. So either I stay away, I just don't go visit that day or whatever. Her and my dad were having like a little bit of an argument like a month ago, which then my dad got sick, which now she's, oh my God, am I taking care of her? And all of it is, I was like, ya ves, y tú que no lo querías cuidar. So now she's way different with them, but they were going through it like a month ago. And I was like, I'm not going to meddle. I'm not going to go into it. It is what it is. And I'm not even going to visit because if I go visit right now, which for me, like I go see them every Sunday, I'm going to get caught in the fire in this war. And I don't want to be part of that at all. And I also want them to stop using me as a middle person. That shit is over with. I am not taking sides. When they were going through that little thing, my dad was trying to tell me his side. I was like, look, that's what you've told me all your life. I can't fix your life. You gotta figure this out. I'm sorry for being so harsh, but I've heard this since I was a little girl. So figure it out. My mom doesn't really, she's not like that. She won't tell us her problems. She gets mad when my dad says that. But by the same token, I'm like, I don't want to hear it. I'm not, and before I wasn't like that. Before, I'd be right in the middle. It's your fault. It's your fault. This is what you need to do. Not anymore. Not at all. Step away from that. I got prana in my system. If you ask me for help, it's different. I will help you if you ask me for help. But if you're not asking, and they never ask you for help because it's this whole thing of, she's my daughter. And like you said, they listen to something on YouTube that you told them and then they go do it. And I'm like, what's the point? But now, I don't know about you, but now it's like what this has given me the prana is I know who I am. I know how to set boundaries. I know not how to get as much intertwined with their entanglements and what they're going through. And overall, I just don't feel guilty for being me.
I still struggle with both. I struggle with forgiveness and playing the victim role, but now not as much as before. So I'm like, okay, there's progress. Like I said, I understand everything, but at the same time, there's times where I get very upset and I know I go back into that victim role. So I go back and forth. I am doing a lot more better. I know with my parents, the same thing. I've always been put in the middle. And it's I'm being pulled from one side and I'm being pulled to the other side. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. There's a psychologist who said that scoliosis, because I have scoliosis, and it's literally like an S backwards. And they say it's because one parent pulls one side and the other parent pulls the opposite side. And I'm like, oh, makes total sense. I know why I have scoliosis. So it just psychologically, when they said that, I was like, okay, I see where it comes from. But that's one of the boundaries that I've had to put. Don't put me in the middle. And I keep getting put in the middle. And I'm like, I'm not playing this game. I said, don't put me in the middle. And they keep doing it. And I'm like, I can't. You're not listening to me. I am not your parent. I am not supposed to take care of you and tell you how to fix these things. This is your relationship. Don't twist it around. And like you said, they start pointing the fingers at each other. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. You can't lie or you can't make stuff up. Like, I'm not going to play this game. And that's where, unfortunately, it's the unhealed child that hasn't worked on themselves and healed those wounds from their childhood that are playing out now as adults.
Right.
So I am better when I do get like a text or a little comment I hear here or there, where before, oh, let me get the phone and respond right away. And now I'm just like, okay, I'm not going to say anything. I'm a lot better in not responding.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I stay away as well, because I think if I'm there, it's just going to trigger me more. So I'm not there yet. But I know when I see certain messages or something, I'm like, no, I'm like, "Oh, okay, fine. I'm not going to respond. It's not for me to take care of it."
Right. And that's huge progress, Elvira.
Yeah.
That's huge. It was always like that for me, of course. And I'm not gonna say that I'll never be triggered again or I'll never try to intervene. I think I'm way more aware and conscious of it now. And I also just want everyone to know that your emotions are valid. If you're somebody that is struggling and you feel a lot of anger with your mom, you feel a lot of frustration and sadness, please don't take this message as you shouldn't feel that way. That's part of the journey. That's part of the healing. And there is a level where you get to the point where your nervous system becomes so strong because what happens is that the strongest nervous system wins in a room. So if they just the way we attune with nervous systems with our parents, with our mom especially, when we go into a meeting, when we go into anywhere, and especially you, because you're very sensitive to that stuff. You're very empathic, that you have those qualities. So the breath of fire, I see why it calls you because you're building a stronger aura with the breath of fire, which is that electromagnetic field that protects you from spiritual attacks or anything really outside of you, but also strengthens your layer of immunity to these things. So I can see why you're called to do that. But you do get to a point, like, why I'm literally, that's what I go to school for, to be able to sit with people in their suffering and not take it on. What I know to be true is that you have to have prana for that. That's the breath. That's the meditation practice. Because without prana, without life force energy, which how does our life force energy become depleted? Becomes depleted because we're unconscious all day, ruminating, being angry, upset. Your mom says something to you and that ticks you off. And then what do? We take it out on the husband, we take it out on the kids. So it's very toxic and it's something that we need to pay attention to. And it is a journey. It's not overnight. It was never overnight for any one of us. I know a meditation can really do amazing impact for you in one sitting, but you have to really commit yourself and dedicate yourself to this work because we're talking about not just however old you are, but think about all the generations. There's so much evidence. I was listening to this article the other day of how it's not just the fascia, which is where like fluid moves through our body that keeps memories. The actual organs store memories, like the liver, the kidneys. Now there's science behind that, and that's all that generational trauma that I'm talking about. So it's not impossible. You can do it. You can strengthen your nervous system to the point where you will be the strongest one in the room. But until then, you need to set those boundaries. You need to learn to step away. And the hardest thing about that is you have to stop feeling guilty and you have to stop feeling shameful because if you're not prioritizing your own mental and physical and spiritual health, then you're not healing. Don't you think?
Yeah. I think it's very important as well to relearn who we truly are. Because at the same time, when we're not being heard, where our feelings are not, where you feel they don't matter, you start losing sense of who you truly are at some point because you're trying to connect with your parents or, you're trying to have that relationship where you're being told or you're not being heard or whatever. And you lose yourself at some point. At least it happened to me where that's why I disconnected from everybody. And I just dove into my meditation, to my daily meditation every day and just studying the Course in Miracles, but learning again who I was or who I wanted to be at this point in my life and who I wanted to continue. So that has helped me a lot because like I said, I could feel people's energy and just what's going on. And I had to, it could be very overwhelming. I feel it is a gift, but I had to learn who I was to be able to how do you say the word, differentiate, or tell the difference of what is actually mine and what is theirs. Because I didn't know at that point. I would go around people and I'm like, what am I feeling? I didn't know if it was me or I had no idea. And it was very overwhelming. So I got to the point where, okay, is this mine? No, this is not mine. It's okay. I have to let it go. It doesn't belong to me. I could sit with you and feel what is going on with you. But some point, I need to know that it doesn't stay with me because it doesn't belong to me and be able to let it go. But I had to relearn who I was to be able to do that. And I think we do. I think a lot of us, that happens to us. We lose ourselves at some point because we're trying to please everybody. We're trying to make everybody happy. We're trying to be everything for everyone. And at some point, we forget to take care of ourselves. And we learn that it is okay to look out for ourselves. It is okay to love ourselves and take care of ourselves and say, no, I'm not going to the party. I feel very overwhelmed. I had a rough week, a lot of work. I'm exhausted. I need to take that time for myself. Because a lot of times, like, I have to go to this party and I have to go to this party. And you have 3 parties in one day and you're trying to run around to meet all of them. You're like, no,
What about me?
you're just one. I'm like, okay, I'm not doing it. I'm exhausted. I need time for myself. I need to rest.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up about needing to know, reminding yourself of who you are, because that was huge for me too. And it was through A Course in Miracles, which you're describing too, because there's two aspects of A Course in Miracles that I really honed in that helped me with this. Well, number one is it's the teachings of Jesus Christ and Christ consciousness. So the whole teachings are about how we are the light. We are the highest daughters of God. We are created in the image of God. We are equal to our brother Jesus Christ. Stop idolizing. Own the Christ consciousness within you. So the whole spiritual psychotherapy was about that, which if you have a mother wound, you don't think you're that. You think you're unworthy, unlovable, all this other stuff, right? Because the ego, remember we talked about that trauma thing last week about what Gabor Mate says it happens inside of you, right? So the ego starts to develop all these identities. So the spiritual psychotherapy helped me with that, knowing who I truly am, allowing myself to accept myself and my darkness and my shadow, bringing it together. The other part of that is think about it. Our brother Jesus Christ is the representation of I am not a victim. That the whole teachings of A Course in Miracles are about how he came to teach us about the resurrection, not about the crucifixion. And that helped me so much because the mother one, and again, I have so much compassion for anybody who's beginning the healing journey, because if you would have told me at the beginning, stop being a victim, I would have been like, "As you don't know what I've been through or whatever." So I get it. I absolutely get it. But my question would be then to you, if you're doing this healing work now and then, would you rather continue to crucify yourself because no one is doing it to you? You're allowing that to happen? Would you rather drop that cross and truly resurrect? And it is not easy work because the psychotherapy is like on steroids. It's like radical teachings of our brother Jesus Christ. He came to teach unconditional forgiveness and unconditional love. He was on that cross saying, them, Father, for they know not what they do. But yet, he's a representation of why we even incarnated. It's what you said earlier. You said, from all those lessons and all those things that I had to go through, I'm grateful for them because they are who I am today. I healed myself, right? We all incarnate in these bodies because we have lessons to learn. None of us are yet in the level of the Christ consciousness, unconditional love. That's why we incarnated. We can do the same level of work where that our brother did, and we're gonna all come home and we're all gonna atone and we're all gonna do that. It might not be in this lifetime, but thank God that in this lifetime for us, we've gotten the tools to alleviate that, to know that we're not victims, that we can take the cross off, and that we can truly accept ourselves in our totality.
Yes, I completely agree. Especially in religion, they focus so much on the crucifixion and not the resurrection. And that's something that we've been learning in the Course in Miracles. And it's so true. This week I had asked somebody specifically not to do something, and they did completely the opposite. And it completely broke my heart. I was like, I can't believe this. Like, this is what I asked from you, and you did the complete opposite. Like, what is this me? And at the same time, this morning I was thinking, I asked God to show me. I asked him to show me the true colors of this other person. And by this person doing this, they're showing that person is showing their true colors. And I'm like, okay, I need to see this differently because I asked God for this and he gave it to me. I didn't expect it to come this way, that it was going to be so painful. And so I was going to feel so betrayed, but this is what I asked for. It doesn't matter how it comes. It's all teaching us something. Just like our mother one, it's teaching us something. And if we don't learn, because a lot of mothers can say, my mom did this, so this is why I am the way I am. And then you're still continuing the cycle. So you're over here complaining and you're telling me what your mother did to you, but yet you're doing the same thing to your children. This doesn't make sense to me. How is it that you're telling me all this? Then what are you doing differently? We have to change our perspective to learn, take the good that we were taught and learn from the bad and do things differently. Otherwise, then, and that's the resurrection right there.
Yeah.
Because we could see it as the crucifixion. This is my cross that I have to be carrying for the rest of my life because this is what my mother did to me. Or we're going to focus on learning and doing better and resurrect into something different.
Correct. Ah, so powerful.
So it's what are you going to choose?
Absolutely. 1,000.
We can do both.
And it also takes the inner work to get to this level to speak the way you're speaking. Like we understand if you're starting new, you're not going to understand.
No.
Yeah.
When I first started the Course in Miracles, like, what are they talking? I don't understand. I tried doing the exercises. I started and I never continued.
Right.
I should. It do help. But yeah, in the beginning, you're like, what is this? What are you talking about? It doesn't make sense. They continue and continue to listen. Even today, there's times that I'll listen. I'm like, I don't understand what they're saying.
Right.
But I continue after so many years because at some point I'm like, oh, now I understand. At some point it's gonna click.
But what's the both things, like the nervous system gets more regulated, so it starts to the brain starts to download. And also we go through different times in life. Like when my grandmother transitioned a couple of years ago, that was a harsh, difficult time when and nothing really made sense. And my dad got sick in November, and for that whole week, like nothing made sense. Like I felt really lost. My mom got sick like a year ago, like I had major spine surgery. Nothing made sense, but that's why we do this work to prepare and to work through and move through life. I also think that a big part of what you're saying right now, and it was definitely a Course in Miracles, but it gave me an aha moment of what you just said is the fact that the Kundalini Yoga meditation also allows us to access the neutral mind more. And in the neutral mind, we have three minds. We have the negative mind, the positive mind, and the neutral mind. And there are specific meditations that you do to balance the neutral mind. But if the way we work in our communities, we work with all the bodies all year. So we're keeping ourselves really in fit energetically with each of the bodies. But that's another thing with Kundalini Yoga meditation. I was more in the neutral mind, and that's not condoning. That's not like even the people now, there are some people that I respected a lot, even in the industry where I'm in the wellness industry. And then like their dark shadows come out and stuff like that. And because I have been someone that has accepted her shadows and that has abused power a long time ago, right? And I'm like a long time ago. I'm just kidding. It wasn't that long. It was only like 10, 15 years or whatever. Because I've done the work to forgive myself and to forgive all. When these people like act out of character, like I don't sit around and judge. I don't let it trigger who I am, I guess I would say. Because the neutral mind, what it does is that means you have a balance of prana moving through your system and you're not so reactive. That's the whole thing. People are gonna be people. Like you have to understand that the only problem would be is if you're idolizing or worshiping. That's the only problem. And we do that a lot even with our parents and with our mom, especially because even the Course says this, that we almost romanticize our childhood when our childhood is like the most dangerous time. Like we're living in our own little world as kids, and we really do need the protection and guidance of our parents. And when they're not around, we're like like they're leaving a little zebra out in the lion cage. Like, that's literally how it is. And then we got all these bumps and all this stuff. So through the meditation practice, what I noticed is that I could be more neutral about people, about situations, about things without making it personal, without making it about me.
Yeah.
Because that's the hardest part. It's when someone acts out a character, when especially it's your mom, and when she breaks a boundary, it hurts the hardest. I don't think there's a worse pain than that. Do you think?
I know. I think that's probably one of the deepest ones for sure. The most painful one.
So we
Yeah.
understand you all. We've definitely been there, whether it's been from a mother who was completely absent, or a mother who was toxic masculine, or a mother who abused you, whatever that is, a mother who still doesn't see you, a mother who you might consider narcissistic. My advice would be the same as we've been giving all throughout our podcast episode. Work on you, heal yourselves, do what you got to do, whether that's boundary setting, whether that's separation for a moment, but work on yourself, because if you focus on you and you get to the root, which is the nervous system, the brain, and the spiritual healing that's needed through the release of the cross, what we've been talking about, right? Then you're going to be more than okay. And not only that, but you're going to break the cycle for your children.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say as the last words for our audience?
You're worthy of working on yourself, on for dedicating time to heal. We live in a world where everything's rushed and we're always running and there's never time for anything. And we need to make time for ourselves, to give ourselves that time to either meditate and heal, work on ourselves, read books, listen to podcasts that are going to help us to grow and understand. A lot of times we think we're alone. We think nobody understands, nobody knows what's going on. Social media is all nice and pretty and happy moments, but nobody sees behind the doors of our pain or our sorrow, whatever. And it's if we don't do the work, if we don't dedicate the time to do the work, then nothing's ever going to change. And we need to understand we are worthy of doing that work. So we can have a better relationship with our children. So we can have a better relationship with our parents, with our family, and really take that time. Because if we don't do it, unfortunately, many of our parents, they're not going to do it. It's not going to happen in this lifetime. So if it doesn't start with us, then when is it going to start?
Oh, so powerful.
Who's it
Thank
going to do it? We're going to leave it for our kids? That's not what I want to leave for my kids. No, no, I
you.
already made a promise for them. It stops here.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us for this very important discussion on the mother wound and its impact on generations. Healing this particular pattern isn't about seeking perfection in relationships. It's about understanding the deeper effects of generational trauma and taking steps to break free from the cycles of pain, of guilt, of emotional neglect. Now, the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy is actually closed for enrollment right now, but I want to offer you a couple of opportunities to continue your healing journey. First, you can always join us in our private free Facebook group community, the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement. Every Wednesday, I go live and I share live healing session, complimentary. And there, I actually share the techniques and the meditations and the tools to actually begin your own healing journey. We're going to be talking a lot about the Adi Shakti mantra, which is the mantra for the divine feminine for healing this particular another one. So you can absolutely join us over there, or you can join us at Satori Vitality and Spirituality. Now, this is for those of you that are brand new to the healing journey. If I put you right into the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy, it's like a psychic shock sometimes, because a lot of women don't have the energy, right? They've never done this type of inner healing work. There's no vitality in their nervous system. So we like to start them off at Satori to get familiarized with the teachings. There, you also have a beautiful community to support you on your own healing journey. So I'm going to link both communities below. Feel free to also reach out if you have any questions about them. I have all of my contact information and Elvira's information here. You can reach out to us on Instagram. So learn more, click on those websites. And just remember that every effort you make in healing creates a beautiful rippling effect that transforms not only you, but past and future generations. Thank you so much for subscribing, for liking, for sharing the podcast. Thank you to all of you that have commented. We do get back to your messages as soon as possible. So we appreciate you and we see you. And we've even seen some men commenting and on our podcast episodes. You all are welcome to comment as well. We generally speak to women because this is the community that we have built. But of course, if you're a man, this applies to you, and please continue to take the teachings. So thank you for you. We'll see you all next week. Setting up.